Good time zone internet. Hello and welcome to Design Club, the only game design show this week that pivoted our topic so that we can do this week's topic next week, and this topic, which we're going to say we would have done next week, this week. I am your humble host, Will, joined as always by my pal, Geoff. Say hi to the people, Geoff.
Hi to the people, Geoff. Hey, everybody. I am Geoffrey Zatkin, the studio director of Extra Credits and Extra History, and more importantly for this, longtime game designer, in here to talk game design, game strategy, game culture with my buddy, voice of the people, Will, our Twitch overlord.
Hello, hello. So, one of your hats, Geoff, that's going to be incredibly relevant for this conversation.
This one?
No, not that one.
Oh, okay.
Although maybe eventually, is that you also are a stats nerd.
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a skosh. You're a person who enjoys the intricacies of tracking data and seeing bigger patterns in the industry and the like. So when I mentioned that there is shenanigans afoot at Metacritic, Geoff went, "Let's say more." So here we are. We're gonna talk about messing with Metacritic. We're gonna talk about why that's weird and why I suspect people are kind of at least partially engaged with it. And we're gonna have a little talk about that. So for everybody who's never purchased a game on Steam, actually, I don't know. Chat, how many of you, by show of hands, how many of you were unaware until I said it that Metacritic scores are also shown on Steam? Because like they're not, or can be shown on screen. They don't have to be, but they're not generally viewed as important as the like Steam review scores, right? But like if I go to Fallout 4 and I go to view page, I scroll down. Yeah, if you go on the right-hand side of the Steam page and you scroll down, there is a box on some, not all, that lists the Metacritic score.
I can even tell you why it's not all, but keep going.
Sure. And so that combined with Steam's user reviews is sort of one of the ways that people get influenced to buy games. Yeah. Most people haven't paid attention, knew but didn't care. Yeah.
Social. There we go. Social stream.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for some people, it doesn't cross your mind. And for some people, it's a big deal, right? And it really depends on how much you want the numeric value of Metacritic versus the vibe check that is
Steam reviews.
Steam reviews. Steam reviews are not numeric. They are up or down, and you're getting a percentage, which is really a vibes indicator, especially because Steam reviews are incredibly volatile and subject to the whims of the community when it comes to things like political decisions by the developers or things outside their control, like DDoS attacks or price hikes or disappointing updates or DLC announcements or whatever. That score is very much in flux and usually represents the current sentiment of the community. Yes.
That just gave, I'm adding this to our notes. What? Actually, I want to ask you and the community right now, because we have good chats.
We do.
In everybody's opinion, what is the purpose of a game's review score?
That's a really great question, Geoff.
We actually didn't have that on our list, and that is what we should be starting with.
Yeah. Okay, so I have kind of a budding idea.
Purpose of something called a review score associated with a game, a book, a movie, a product, on Amazon, whatever it is. General purpose from the name of what you would expect from it.
Sure.
And then we can get to the other things too.
And this is going to be, I think, personal to some extent, right? Because I don't know that we're looking for an authoritative definition. If we were looking for an authoritative definition.
I got an authoritative definition.
Right. But you have it. We're not asking them to magically figure out what it is. Right.
but even just mentally.
Right. Okay. So this is good. Is this game worth my money? That's a good. It's an indicator.
That is, yeah.
Right.
Or not just game. Like I'm even broadening it out.
Right. Is this purchase
worth my money?
Worth my money. Okay. Cool.
I think that is a fantastic, actually working definition.
Sure. I also like the cynical. It's something to put in an advertisement. Right. Yep. We see it in movie trailers all the time. Right. You see like.
That screen.
Right, yeah.
Like,
so-and-so gives this 3.5 stars.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Rough indicator of the overall quality. Oh, yeah. Do people like this game? That's a very, Do people like it? Is it, well, and that's one of the places where it gets a little sticky now, isn't it? We were just talking about how I don't like the art style for either League of Legends or World of Warcraft. I don't like them. I wouldn't review them badly, but I don't like them, right? And so there's some amount of fuzziness on that topic, right? A shorthanded the game's value for the price asked. Yep.
Throw in one that we're going to talk about later too.
Yeah, very, very low scores can also have their own appeal. Yeah, bad movies can be fun. I think of all of the movies I watched in college, I referenced Trolls 2 the most, which is a god-awful movie that I cannot recommend. But you can watch it if you wanted to. And that's right. Yeah, Copper Chef's got a point. It should be vibes, but I can't trust any score nowadays. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit as well. But I get the general sense that it is a qualitative indicator. So sort of the summation of what we're getting from chat are there's a qualitative indicator of how likely the product is to fulfill its promise. Whatever its promise is, you will enjoy this 2.5-hour movie. You will enjoy this 30-hour video game. You will enjoy eating at this restaurant. You will enjoy this new can of different flavored Coke with green pepper flavor. You will enjoy it because it is well reviewed.
Enjoy is an interesting term too.
Yeah.
Because I want to move for a moment. Something I want to talk to you later. I'm going to bring up now.
Sure.
Which is reviews, and this is going to help our Metacritic thing. I'm going to divide them into two groupings because this is a little bit of a trick question. There are, let's call them for the moment, critic reviews.
Sure.
Reviews done by people who, let's just say, have some training or expertise about the subject matter.
Sure.
And then I'll just call them for the moment community reviews. Ones where anybody can go in and leave a review.
Sure.
And in my mind, these are very different things.
Okay.
And necessarily so. Because, for example, let's take Transformers movies. You can pick any of them. On a Metacritic score, I remember looking at this at one point. It may be a little old and outdated, but it doesn't really matter. The average Metacritic score for a Transformer movie was, I think, a 32 of 100.
Sure. Bad. Low.
But these were some of the highest grossing movies of the year, every year. Because from a critical standpoint, they were objectively bad movies, but audiences still enjoyed them. Because what the critics were reviewing was different than what the audience was going for seeing.
Right. It is very different. If you sent a Michelin reviewer, someone who is experienced and has a lot of experience with reviewing fine dining, and you ask them their opinion of a fast food joint, right?
Yeah.
They're
though Anthony Bourdain famously liked In-N-Out.
Sure, absolutely. But we can pick like, you know, and when I say fast food chain, I don't mean the good one that you like. I mean the terrible one that you only go to when it's the only place open in your town and you're out way too late. You know the one I'm talking about, and it's different for everyone and it's different for every place, but you know the one, right? And so its purpose will be different for the consumer versus the critic, right? In exactly that same way.
Actually, I might even go further. Instead of Michelin star, say you take somebody who's a wine reviewer.
Sure.
And then you take somebody like me who, because I don't have a great sense of smell, you know, I don't know if I can tell the difference between a 10 and a 30 and a $50 bottle of wine.
Sure.
Like, I'm happy. It's like, it's good enough.
Sure.
Like, that person reviewing the wine and I have radically different experiences interacting with a bottle of wine.
Sure.
And because they're a trained professional at this, and I'm not, and have a slight impairment.
Sure.
And so, you know, but I'm like, oh, hey, this is great. They may be like, no, it's not. And their training makes them like it less because they can appreciate the finer things. There's a whole range of reviewers, and people who are trained were expecting to have different styles of review than a place where you can go and just tens of thousands of people can give it an up or a down vote.
Right.
The other one is trained reviewers know how to use a scale. On a 10-point scale,
Yes.
a trained reviewer can say, no, this is a 6, or this is a 7, or this is a 6.5, or a 3, or a 9. And they don't dole out the 9s all the time because they know they need to be rating this on a scale. And if 10 of the games they rated were all 9s, that means either they were on a really weird streak of reviewing particularly good games, or that they couldn't discern the difference, which kind of defeats the point of them being a professional reviewer. Audiences come in and are most likely to give something like a 1 or 2 star or a 9 or 10 star.
Right.
Audiences very rarely can define that, oh, this is a 5 or a 6. Most people who give reviews come in because they either really love something or really hate something. So they come in, they're like, yeah, this was great. Like, I've seen the way I review Audible titles. Like, if I enjoyed it, it's a whole bunch of 5 stars. If I didn't, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not coming in doing a professional review.
Sure.
And so by its very nature, professional reviews are far more granular and audience views aren't, which means that they snowball way more than professional reviews do.
And one of the things about that that's also very worth noting and will come up pretty strongly in this is that reviewers usually don't look at other reviews before they review the game, right?
They don't want to have an anchoring effect.
Right, yes. They don't have an anchoring effect, whereas crowds do. They do, right? If you're
going onto the Steam game to review Fallout 4, you're going to see the reviews as you're getting into the where I leave a review.
Yeah.
Like it's part of your interface flow.
Yeah. Yes, you have to look at the current review score in order to leave a review. You're totally correct.
And this isn't saying reviewers don't have bias. Nobody doesn't have bias, but theoretically a professional at a thing is more able to recognize and adjust to their bias because that's their job.
Right.
Where somebody coming in, you know, if I'm going to go rate a bottle of wine, my set of biases might be, I look at it and go, wow, that $50 bottle of wine doesn't seem like it's 5 times better than this $10 one.
Right.
And, you know, there's a whole range of things in there. So part of talking about reviews is acknowledging that A, you know, we aren't machines, but B, there are different people leaving reviews, and therefore categorically you kind of need to separate them into, here's your professional reviewers or your trained reviewers for whatever the subject matter is. And, you know, if you're a good wine reviewer, that doesn't mean you know anything about games.
Right.
Like your subject matter expertise is limited. But there's basically, theoretically, trained reviewers and there's community reviews.
Right.
And these end up with very different results.
I also think that a big facet of this that is worth addressing is that because trained reviewers are usually, though not always, doing this professionally or semi-professionally, they tend to be more complete.
Yeah.
Right. Versus we'll use a very simple example. We'll look at the Steam reviews, right? When was the last, like, if you go into Steam reviews, you will find some that elucidate on their reasoning, right?
Yeah.
This is why I don't like this game. These are the things that I found wanting in it. These are the things that I love. These are the things that I thought were awesome. And then you were for a while very likely to get crude ASCII art in some of the reviews, and you still might for some games, and those are not helpful, right? So it becomes a sentiment meter rather than a critique, rather than an analysis, right? It's still useful as a sentiment tracker.
Oh yeah, and these are all useful.
Yes.
I wanted to kind of separate them out as we're getting into the conversation.
Yeah.
By the way, from Debatable Awesome, he's saying, it's a remarkable degree which reading other people's opinions shapes your own, especially subconsciously. We actually, back when I ran a studio named EDAR, which was a video game research studio, did an industry study on this that really shocked a lot of people. And the really short version was, this was right after Plants vs. Zombies came out. And we went to a college campus, and this was basically how our study went. Was we grabbed hundreds of college kids and did a quick pre-check to make sure they hadn't ever seen or played the game before. And since it just came out, this wasn't as big a thing as if now. And Plants vs. Zombies is unarguably a pretty decent game.
Yeah.
Like it is a good, solid game. But what we did was, while they were waiting to come get paid money, I think it was $10 at the time, to come play the game for a little while. While they were waiting for it, there was a little sheet with reviews of the game they were about to play. And we faked these. There were some that basically gave it a good score, review score, some that gave it a high review score, and some that gave it a low review score. So actually, the medium ones, actually, I think was the control. It was what the game's actual was, which was pretty high. And then we took the ones and bumped it up and bumped it down.
Sure.
And what happened was the kids basically read that and then got to play the game for a little while. And then they got offered to basically get paid the money they'd been offered or keep a copy of the game instead. Which was, it was, and Plants vs. Zombie wasn't that expensive. So
yeah,
the people who, and we put the baseline on, read the real review, played the game then.
Sure.
The people who read the higher review scores, and the number's a little fuzzy in my mind because it's been over a decade, but I think we're 30% more likely than the people who read the low review score to keep a copy of the game instead of the $10. And so this was, remember, they read a review and then played the game. They got to play this game for half an hour by themselves. And so that one bit of information, whether the game was rated low or high, made more than a 30% difference on the people who basically decided to pay real money for the game, i.e. they didn't get given $10, they got given a copy of the game versus not. That is a remarkable difference for one piece of information, followed by you then get to go make your own opinion,
right,
playing this game by yourself.
Right. You are
that's a staggering amount of difference for that. It wasn't like they just decided after the review. They then got to go play it for half an hour.
Yep. So
anyway, sorry, fascinating study.
No, it is. And that's
like our preconceptions from reading reviews are strong.
Absolutely. I'm actually kind of curious if I can figure out a way to get my Steam DB add-on to hide all review scores. Kind of interested in that for when I go looking for games, because every week I run a review show on a roguish game called The Rogue Review. It's on Tuesdays here on Twitch, and I'm always fascinated by that.
Anyway, so throwing in, and one of the reasons review scores are worth talking about is because review scores influence people's behavior so strongly.
Yes.
Even though we don't really realize, I mean, people realize it, but they don't realize how strong this is.
Right.
But it's also a little bit different in different places, and it's partially based on how much you trust the reviewer.
Yes.
Which we can also get to.
Yes, absolutely. So that's a review score from a critic, right? And singular critic and singular review score. And we'll say that the crowd is a reviewer, right? That gives us a sentiment analysis of some kind. And then enter Metacritic. Metacritic is an aggregator of reviews. It takes reviews from many professional reviewers and sort of aggregates them and gives a final score. So, for instance, Fallout.
Actually, they have two scores.
Right.
Their aggregated critic one and their community voted one, which is similar to Steam ones.
Correct. And the aggregated critic one is normally, though not always, the one that people ascribe value to or ascribe meaning to. For instance, if you're on Steam and you look at Fallout 4, it gets an 84, and that's the critic score for Fallout 4. Although interesting, fascinating, different versions also get different scores, and the Steam version links to the PlayStation 4 version, which has an 87 instead of an 84, but that's not the point. I was just confused for a moment.
Interesting.
Yeah, very weird.
Actually, that isn't uncommon, and a lot of it is because despite the fact that it's the same game, there are minor differences, like how well did they adapt to, for example, the PlayStation's control scheme versus, say, your desktop one. And some have better frame rate on consoles than on PC. It's actually not uncommon at all for there to be a different review score based on what the platform is. Like, there's a lot of games that scored, say, high 80s, but on their Wii version were like mid 70s because the performance wasn't as good, or the things they had to cut to make it run on the Wii impacted the quality of the game. Mm-hmm. And so that is a Metacritic thing, is that they look at the, they'll give an overall, but they'll also give it on a per platform basis.
Yep. And then worth noting that there are two different scales. The number out of 100 on Metacritic is the critic score. And the number out of 10, usually with a fraction, is the user score. So in this case, Fallout 4 for the PlayStation 4 has an 87 on the meta score and a 7.0 on the user score. And you can you can add your own reviews and what have you on Metacritic. But its function is largely to serve as this aggregator, right? This place that condenses many reviews into a number, right? Into a singular number. And
that's its job.
Yep.
Here is one number for game.
Yep. Yeah. What is my job? You aggregate data. Aw. Right? And that's useful, right? Because if you don't want to read all of the reviews from, I don't know, PlayStation Universe and IGN and Digital Chumps and Gaming Nexus and Slant Magazine and Telegraph and Digital Spy and PSN stores and Games Radar Plus and everyone else who reviewed Fallout 4, you can just look at the number and get an idea. Now,
by the way, Will, that was a really interesting list you read, and I'm going to get to that in a moment too. Because one of the things when I was running my game research studio is we, after doing some research, realized how important the review scores were, and actually made our own internal version of Metacritic. And because of that, I know a lot about how Metacritic works, because I think I designed a slightly better one, but I'm
biased.
I am biased. But it was also, it was internally used, and we know it was pretty good because we ran data models against it and looked at our results, and we're like, oh, wow, that works well.
Yeah.
But I have deconstructed the Metacritic stuff, and I also have great respect for them because it was interesting enough doing it just for games, and they do it for games, movies, books, and a whole variety of other things. Yep. They basically cover media.
Yes.
Oh, music.
Yep.
But let's talk a little bit about how they do it, because part of that is what makes it interesting. So we're going to get to the user or the community stuff in a minute. What I'm going to start off with is the let's call them professional critics. And Will, tell me if any of this is interesting and or surprising.
Sure.
Because there's a lot more to it than you would think.
Sure.
Like the base version would be like, oh, cool. Go slurp in a whole bunch of stuff from the internet and average it.
Right.
Like that would be the base thought on how you do it. So think number one, what sites do you take?
Right.
Metacritic is very specific on a per industry basis about what sites they consider to be professional critic sites. Because if you look on the internet right now, there are people on blogs leaving review scores. There's community scores on somewhere like Steam, which could theoretically count as a score, all the way up to like IGN and Games Radar, but also over to things like Reader's Digest or CNET or Playboy or like any number of other things. And so the first thing Metacritic did was, on a per industry basis, decide what critics are worth covering.
Sure.
And then they had to be consistent on that. Like, if they decide Reader's Digest is an acceptable place, that means they then have to collect every review Reader's Digest does. It isn't a one-off thing.
Correct.
It is, we are now setting up to intake data from this one place indefinitely.
Because if you don't, right, once you've decided that you're accepting data from a source, you must accept all data from that source, because anytime you don't, it's a bias, right? It introduces another factor in the review score, right? So you have to take all of the data that they're offering, essentially.
Yeah. So number one, it's an aggregation of professional review sites, but it's curated, and that they don't accept everybody, and they have some criteria to decide, and they never disclose exactly what that is.
Right.
But from that list Will read you, all of those are sites you'd listen and you're like, oh yeah, those all sound like professional review sites.
Yep.
And none of them are Bob's blog, Bob's video game blog 123.
Sure.
Kind of thing. So, and they keep track of that. One of the other things they do, and one of the reasons that Steam only has some reviews, is they have a minimum number of reviews that they have to get before they consider this to be something they can report on. Meaning that if there's a bucket, or a slop bucket, what am I? Bargain bin listing of games.
Yes.
Or actually, let me rephrase it. IGN cannot cover every game that comes out.
Yes.
Both, it's too much, and honestly, most of their readers wouldn't care about a whole bunch of games. So IGN only covers a certain amount of games or certain style of game.
Yes.
The same, like Reader's Digest probably only covers a couple of games per year, where Wired covers more games. Like, different groups have different amounts. Because of this, there are plenty of games that might only get 2 or 3 review scores from their entire list of all these places Metacritic tracks. So until you pass X threshold, they won't publish a review, because they're worried that if there's only 2 or 3 sites in there, they're going to be publishing something that is disproportionately different from what they would normally publish, because they don't have a large enough sample size of data.
Right. They recognize that their role as an aggregator is to take a differing or to take a number of viewpoints. They don't necessarily have to differ, but to take a number of viewpoints and to report on the average of them, or the aggregate of them, not to report that only one reviewer played Hello Kitty Island Adventure and they think it's the best game ever, and they've given up all other games ever, and so Metacritic's going to give it 100, right? They're trying to avoid that phenomena. Where,
or maybe one of the sites that they've said, is worthwhile is, we love strategy games. And so they might only review strategy games, and they might only review good strategy games, which would mean if they happen to review, something that goes in and they're biased towards liking them. Right. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of reasons for this. And so there is a minimum amount. They also have to do something. They have to transform scores. Right. Because, they're rated on a 100-point scale.
Right.
If IGN gives something an 8, is that an 80?
Probably.
Like, for groups, if they were doing a 10-point scale, it would absolutely be an 8. But if IGN can only either do an 8 or a 9,
right,
you start having to ask questions. How about when you get to letter grades, Will?
Yeah. Like, what's a B minus?
For example, is a C a 70?
Right.
Is a D a 60?
Right. Because
most people would think a D is an awful game, but a 60 review score isn't equivalently as low as a D would be for some things.
Right. Especially because of the, there is a cultural bias that differs depending on where you are and how you took to schooling regarding letter grades specifically and their worth. Right. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that has to go into transforming a letter grade back into a number, right? Transforming a number into a letter grade makes sense. Doing it the other way, much more difficult.
Right. And it's an interesting thing because, for example, I've seen IGN give games in scores of like a 30 before.
Sure.
Like for games that were particularly bad. An F or even a D.
Right.
Like if it was a letter grade, IGN might have decided a 30 is like a D minus.
Sure.
But if you do a straight transform, that's more like a 60. So you get, basically, if you're doing something like this, you have to figure out what your scale is for transforming letter grades into a 100-point scale, and 10-point scale into a 100-point scale, and 5-point scale into a 100-point scale in a way that is consistent across a whole bunch of other things. And so, not that this is rocket science, but just calling out, there's a lot more to the way you have to do the transformative math than people initially think of until you actually start thinking about how to make this system yourself because you want to do something like this.
Correct.
And the other thing is Metacritic weighs different review sites differently.
Sure.
Because if it puts a formula in, it might decide that should Wired's review be considered as heavily in the scale as, say, IGN's? Or should Reader's Digest? Or like, and so there's also some sort of weighting that they do on some of the sites that they use. And all of this goes together in also knowing that every site doesn't review every game.
Right.
And so what Metacritic's job is to give you that single score, but they also have to look at how many people review it, does it hit the minimum number, how they do the transforms, how they weight each reviewing group as to its authoritativeness, and all of this is what they magically transform in their back end into the one number, which is also a living number, because at any point, more sites might come in and post a review or even change their review. And so all of this goes into the one score that Metacritic gives you. And I know this because I reverse engineered it to make our own score.
Yeah.
That we just weighted a little differently.
Yeah.
But it was still very close.
Okay.
So Metacritic's great service is it can look at all of these sites and come back and say, cool, this game was an 82.
Yeah. And the work that goes
Sorry,
into,
I thought a little bit about this.
And the work that goes into that and the confidence they have in their methodology is why we refer to that critic score as the Metacritic score, right? Because that is their product, right? That is the thing that they are putting all of the work into and saying, yes, we have this thing, we have confidence in this number that we're going to publish, and the official Metacritic score for this game is an 84.
Right. And that is why they are the industry standard, at least in video games, for game review scores.
Right. But they also do user reviews.
Right.
Which is way less exciting.
And user reviews, you also, like, there's a whole bunch of that you can't or shouldn't do for user reviews. You're not you're measuring the individual user as to their authoritativeness.
Yeah.
And since the user is reviewing it on Metacritic, they don't have to do transforms between, 8 out of 10, or this is a B minus, or whatever is on the scale. So this is purely a numbers vote.
Yeah.
If you get 1,000 people to come in and vote, they take those 1,000, they add up the numbers, they average them out, poof, there's the review score.
Right.
What I don't know, does Steam let you edit a review?
I believe it does, or it has at some points, and I believe that it still does.
I think Metacritic does as well. I'm not sure. It's interesting. If you don't let people do that, you avoid things like weird review bombing and sentiment. But if you do, that lets people play more of the game and be like, oh, actually, by the end, this was pretty good. I'm happy.
Yeah. Yep.
Or not.
Yep.
So the ups and the downs, again, to all of that is it's Metacritic for what they measure is only the critics' reviews. It is the meta review of the critics, where the user score is whatever people want to vote and however many people decided they wanted to actually go vote on it.
Yeah. Now, the truly fascinating thing is that, how do I put this? It feels, at least to me, that the user reviews on Metacritic inherit some amount of the, what's the word I want?
Gravitas?
Gravitas, yeah, of the critic reviews, because those are user reviews on Metacritic. They're not user reviews anywhere. They're user reviews on Metacritic. And because Metacritic is trusted to be a place where reviews are aggregated, I feel like consumers value that user review differently than, say, a Steam review score, even though they're functionally collected identically.
Though I also feel like the people who would go to Metacritic to review a game are more involved in the reviews. Like, they're more interested in that, and it's an extra step, as opposed to Steam, where, you know, you open up your game from its launcher and you can be like, oh, I can slap a review on this right here.
Yeah. You're adding the extra step of difficulty discourages people from doing it idly, right? By adding just ever so small a barrier, you're greatly increasing the desire that someone needs to have in order to go and leave a review. Yeah,
like, for example, I bet that the audiobook reviews on Metacritic are probably better than the ones on Audible, because on Audible, when my book finishes, the little thing pops up and I'm like, yeah, you know, 5-star, 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 done. Or if I went and took that extra step, I'd be thinking more about it.
Right. The product review that's, while it is temporally most adjacent to it, it's also not a thing you put a lot of effort into, versus I have finished this audiobook and I now have thoughts I wish to share with the world. Right.
Well, part of it too is, I know part of it is self-serving, which defeats it a little bit. I know that what I rate highly, when Audible does its recommendations, it will rate things similar to that.
Also true.
So I don't have a big incentive to be like, it's either kind of I enjoyed it or I didn't.
Right.
It's more of an up or down vote. Do I want more things like this or not?
Sure.
And because I know that, I rate based on that system. You know, if it's Dungeon Crawler Carl, it's going all 5 stars.
Right.
Or if it's a Guy Gavriel, okay, but like, there are certain things, or a John Scalzi book, like, it's just getting the stars slapped on it, so I get to know when the next thing comes out.
Yep. Okay.
So that's kind of the Metacritic stuff. And because of that, and what Will was talking about for rating, in addition to highly rated critic games, highly rated user games on Metacritic are often looked at a little differently than a highly rated game on, say, Steam or the PlayStation Store.
Right. But sometimes things get weird, and it's worth pointing out, not like this is sort of an unavoidable part of having an open review system.
Yes.
Which is that some weirdness is afoot at Metacritic, and this weirdness is actually the genesis of our conversation. So,
indeed,
last year, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 came out, and to universal acclaim. Loved by critics, loved by players, loved by award panels, right? So many awards, all the places, all the different award shows, record-breaking numbers, loved, streamed, everything. And it, in fact, set a new high target on Metacritic for the user score, which is a 9.5. Previously, the highest had been a 9.3.
Wow. Yeah. That's really hard, because there's always somebody who wants to come in and 0 or 1 star thing just to be, honestly, a dick on the internet.
Yes, that is very true. Yes. And some people enjoy that greatly. They enjoy being contrarian, we'll say. They enjoy yucking other people's yums. They enjoy feeding in MOBAs, right? They're always... They enjoy
channeling their inner 5-year-old.
Yeah, right, for sure. And, you know, that's a whole different topic, but that applies to review scores too. So... Geoff,
do you have a picture of this, by the way?
I not handy, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to read you the list of the top user scores on Metacritic, okay?
Okay. This like top 10 or something?
Yeah, top 10.
You're going to start from 10 to go to 1?
Yeah, we'll start with 10 and go to no. Number 10, the Xbox version of Silent Hill 2.
Okay.
That makes sense. Well received. Number 9, Chrono Trigger. Number 8, The Legend of Zelda. I believe this is Ocarina of Time.
Is this all time, by the way, or
this is all? No, this is all time. Excuse me. Number 8 is actually Majora's Mask. It's rated higher than Ocarina of Time. That's very strange to me. Number 7 is Heroes of Might and Magic 3.
Okay.
Number 6 is The Witcher. And then, by the way, the rest of these are tied for second. So they're kind of arbitrary. But tied for second, we have The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, Blood and Wine.
Okay.
Metal Gear Solid 3.
Okay.
Metal Gear Solid.
Okay.
Silent Hill 2 for the PlayStation 2. And Disney's Cory in the House for the Nintendo DS.
One of these things, Will, is not like the other.
Right. And that's where we get to the weirdness, right? And I think it's actually doing something really important, which is drawing attention to this problem.
By the way, for those of you who came in from our thumbnail on YouTube, I initially had the cover of Cory on the House as part of that thumbnail.
Yeah.
But it is such an off-putting game cover that eventually I just removed it and put the Metacritic logo there instead.
Yeah.
Because I thought it would tank our views by putting the actual game cover.
It's such a bad game cover. It's not a good game cover. It's not a good game. It has, hold on. It has, so the Metascore is available after 4 critic reviews. There are only 2 critic reviews for it. One of them is IGN and it gets a 30. And one of them is Da Game Boys and it gets a 40. Critics do not like this game.
Right. And getting only 2 reviews means that it was considered such shovelware slop that no other site deemed it worth at least the couple of hours for one of their reviewers to go and play it.
Right.
And put a thing on it because they thought so few people would look it up and the ad revenue. Like, it's pretty simple. If they think enough people will read it to recoup the ad revenue, like somebody gets assigned to go review it.
Yeah. So the user score is a 9.3 after 7,339 user ratings. For comparison, Clair Obscur has 23,947 user ratings. And we'll choose something older. We'll take this is Chrono Trigger for the DS, by the way. That's based on 1,000 ratings. So Chrono Trigger has a 9.2 after 1,000 ratings. Clair Obscur has a 9.5 after close to 25,000 ratings, and Cory in the House is catching up at just over 7,000.
Yeah, which is an absurd number of reviews, considering that only 2 sites.
Right.
And that makes you think for a moment, why does this have so many reviews and why are they so high?
Right.
And of course, the answer is it's the internet.
Right. It's the internet and it's memes.
It's a meme stock.
And also, it is a good reminder. Like,
although who organized it? Do you know?
Reddit. I'm gonna blithely say Reddit, but I'm pretty confident it was Reddit. Reddit tends to do this. This is a Reddit-esque thing. But I do think it is an interesting highlight, right? In the same way that the meme stock comparison is apt in that it draws attention to a real thing, right? Like GameStop getting shorted, right? The original, the OG GameStop meme stock stuff, not the all of the everything afterwards that has become real weird. Weird. Excellent folding ideas video on that. But the
number go up.
The original, like, hey, there's a problem in the system and this is serving to highlight it. This kind of feels like that. Not that there's anything wrong with Clair Obscur or anything particularly great about Cory in the House. There isn't. But it is serving to highlight and remind us that this is very cookable. This whole system is, while we rely on it and use it as a way to...
or at least the user-facing side is cookable in a way radically different than the critic-facing side.
Yes.
Because theoretically, a popular group on Reddit could be like, hey, let's all go do this one thing today. It'll take everybody 5 minutes. And and that will always be the downside of community aggregated things, is that if a community of just aggregated things that anybody can do is if a community decides to disproportionately throw their weight, say in this case, pumping it up, or in another case, review bombing.
Right.
Like, it's a thing. It's hard to gate that.
Right. It's John Oliver's audience influencing the vote for national bird I don't even remember which country. It might have been New Zealand. John Oliver got in on that and was like, hey, I think this should be your national bird. And then his audience screwed with the voting, right?
John Oliver's like, look, somebody put their national bird group thing up for a vote.
Right. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be funny if?
Right. Or the what am I thinking of? Oh, Bodie McBoatface, right? Or any time. Several towns have done this in the U.S. I don't know if places outside the U.S. do it, but it's really funny what they do. People have like contests to like name snow plows. I don't know why that specifically, but I've seen it multiple times around the U.S. People will like name snow plows, and they're all memes because it's a thing that people get to suggest ideas for, right? So this does serve to like highlight that, right? And so this is a great question, right? Should regular user reviewers start to have higher powered reviews?
Oops. Oh, that wasn't what I clicked on. Oh, okay.
You're locked out because of how long we need to leave it up so people can read it. Give it a second. You gotta give it a second. Yeah. I'll get that one out there.
No, it's good.
We have people talking about their calendars arriving, which is excellent. Yeah. Mom, why is Batman our national bird? Correct. So there isn't a way to stop this and keep, I don't think, there isn't a way to stop this phenomena from occurring elsewhere. And by the way, we've chosen what is possibly the most low stakes version of this. It happens the other way all the time, right?
For much higher stakes, which we'll come back to shortly.
Yeah, for much higher stakes and for much more serious reasons than Reddit got bored and thinks Cory in the House is the best DS game ever and should therefore be the best user-rated game ever. That appears to be the goal from everything I've seen, both when I looked at it for breakfast and when I looked at it for this. That appears to be the goal, right?
And like, it is theoretically a solvable problem, but the steps you would have to take to solve it would, in some cases, defeat the purpose of general, easy community reviews.
Correct, because this is very much on the axis of security and accessibility, right?
Yeah.
That is security and accessibility is a continuum, right? The more secure you are, the less accessible you are. The more accessible you are, the less secure you are.
Yeah. Because you could, for example, take more of a Wikipedia style approach, which is you have to have an account, you have to be signed in, we track what you do, and if we've caught you messing with things, you will be banned and all of your past work will be deleted.
Right.
Kind of stuff. In other words, like for Metacritic, they could say, we take this super seriously, you have to be signed in, you have to do this, maybe require a driver's license put in so we know you're a real person. And if we ever detect you taking part in what seems to be a meme push, your account will be deleted along with all the there are ways you could theoretically do it, but that would make some of this so not fun to participate in for something that Metacritic actually gets a lot of value out of. They're like, look, we spent all this effort on one thing. We spend this tiny bit of effort for this one other score we get to show as well. Yeah. We can
Yeah, and then I think Spin Dash has a great point that Steam's had some attempts at solutions by taking all data but not aggregating all data. Steam a while ago introduced several features where you could choose to exclude from the overall score periods of extreme review volatility, which is generally shorthand for we detected a review bomb because 10,000 people left negative reviews in the span of 20 minutes. Right. So we're going to not include that data in the overall aggregate because we don't think it accurately represents the big picture.
And in some cases, kind of going back to what is the purpose of a review score? Like if the purpose of a review score is to say, is this game worth my money? That has nothing to do with, did they use AI slop in it? Or did they make a political statement that I particularly don't like? Or is there a female lead protagonist? And I don't think women should ever be portrayed positively in game. Like there's all sorts of stuff that have nothing to do with how good is the game, but because people can't comment on that, they use the game's review score as a proxy for sentiment. And theoretically, review score and sentiment are very different things. Like in a ideal world, you'd have a review score and a sentiment score. And people could say, great game, but bad sentiment. Like, we don't think this is good company or good, whatever it is. But because there isn't a separate thing, in a lot of cases, the purpose of a review score, is this game worth my money? Is this a good game? Gets subverted to reflect on something else.
Correct.
And that kind of goes with review bombing or other things as well.
Yeah. And it is quite interesting because there is and I'm sure I'm about to get a whole bunch of people in the comments and in chat saying, but I do that, who don't drill into the actual text of the reviews, because that's not what's top level on any of this, right? There's a bar on the Steam page that says overwhelmingly positive or overwhelmingly negative, and if you scroll down, there's just the Metacritic score. It doesn't even tell you how many critics contributed to that review score. It just says the Metacritic score for this game is 70, right? And the overall analysis of the game on Steam is overwhelmingly negative. And if you don't drill into the why, because the why is not compulsory either to be given or to be received by someone looking at the review score, you just end up with this confused conflation of the quality of the product and the sentiment around the product. And those are two, right?
And this is something you don't get as much with like the Corey in the House one, but you get absolutely with review bombing.
Yes.
Because it really, again, a theoretical review score, is this game worth my money, is radically different than, as I saw in the comments, is this dev a bigot? Is so-and-so is so-and-so? And it goes back to, I'll click it again, what Dark Wolf said, which is, can I click on it again?
Yeah.
Is the art good, not the artist?
Yeah.
We're not caring about the people that made it or anything around it. It is a review of the game.
So, interesting question. And I didn't think we were going to get into the philosophy of like review scores, but I like this.
Yeah. Well, hey, Will, we're here. We might as well do it.
Right. I would argue that for a large portion of the population, that is a distinction without a difference. That for many people, they have come to view the worth of an object or a product or a service as being inherently tied to the overall picture that participates in, rather than just like a singular thing. So we'll take you know what, Geoff? We're just gonna light it and throw it in, right? We're gonna take a nice controversial example, right?
Sure.
The Harry Potter game, Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh, okay. That was one of the ones I was kind of cool.
Right.
So throw it in.
Yeah, right. So I think there are some people who would argue strongly that it is impossible to separate the question of, is this game worth my money, the purpose of review score, from these are the purposes that the money which I am paying for this game is going towards. Right. And so there is that part of it that as consumers become more sophisticated, as we have more and more connected, involved consumer bases for things like video games in particular, because we're all online, and that's probably not great. And when you're done watching this, you should probably go touch some grass. I know I need to, but like those two things are not separable for a large number of people in cases like that. Right. So it becomes
it's tricky
difficult
too, because like that game we're talking about, the Harry Potter one, you have Rowling, who's the author who, well past the series, I think, started making some statements that a lot of people are like, wait, what? Right. But also the team that made the game was incredibly diverse and like skewed heavily into LGBTQ. Right. And so it gets even more nuanced on that is, do I support the work of those people, even though I don't like the person who initially made the IP? Like, it's a complicated matter.
Right. Yeah. There is a huge, and again, all of those questions, which someone might consider and ask and take into a nuanced approach to, should I buy this product? Should I recommend this product to others? Is it reflected in a review score at all? Even the Metacritic score, even the well-considered aggregate of the Metacritic score still boils an entire multi-page review of a game on IGN down to a number. and then plugs that number into a formula and then says this game gets an X, right? This game gets a 90, this game gets a 70, that game gets a 30, right? And so it does, this is like, I think we're coming up against the limitation of this, which is, if it's not the purpose, we still have to admit that like, all the review does, especially on Steam, is tell us whether or not people are particularly happy with that game and that developer right now at the moment that we're loading this Steam page.
And some of this is tricky too. Like, take the book Ender's Game, which is unarguably an amazing book, and in some cases a life-changing book for a lot of people. You know, can you hold that, or should you tell people not to read it because 20 years later, the author came out and made, again, some statements that a lot of people wouldn't agree with?
Right.
Like, and this is a hard thing, and it's a, you know, per person choice. And like, you know, for me, over a lot of time of thinking about it, I decided that I wasn't going to let what creators did later rob me of my ability to enjoy something in life.
A thing that was foundational to you at a point in your life. Right. Yeah.
Right.
And that,
I might not buy recent stuff they've done.
Correct.
But again, it's a hard line. It is a hard thing to figure out in there. And this is why I'm also advocates of not leaving review scores as review scores and finding other ways to talk about sentiment.
Right. There's a reason I don't do a review score on Rogue Review. I spend between an hour and 4 hours playing a game and talking about what I like and don't like. Right.
Sandman being another fantastic example.
Yeah.
I have multiple pieces of Sandman art that I own that are way older than any recent happenings.
My complete is behind my green screen, right? And so this is sort of like, in my opinion, the biggest shortcoming of this, and sort of it's really, I want to, if this gets to the people who did it, who started this, my hat off to you, team who believes in Corey in the house. Salutes to you on your upward journey. May you make it someday. And for allowing us to be reminded that like there is more going on here than just, oh, this game's good because it's got a good score, right? Not that Corey in the house is bad. I haven't played it, but by all accounts is bad.
We will not comment positively or negatively on games we haven't played because that kind of defeats the whole purpose. But like review scores, if you're looking at their actual purpose, which is say how good is the game, that's where I trust the critical version of it, and why I think the community ones will always be lacking or suspect. Because people are coming in, again, there's a couple reasons, you know, they rate either really high or really low. They don't have the nuance, and they're coming in with a lot of, I'm going to use baggage not in a pejorative way, but in a, you know, the baggage that they have interacting with
biases,
that IP, that platform, that style of game, and everything else around them, on how their experience is with it.
Right. And I think that I also think it's very worth noting that at this point that like it is worth acknowledging that that a lack of understanding of the facts regarding some games, particularly as we get into remakes and remasters, is also a problem with review scores, right? Like seeing reviews for like, this game feels like it's taking an awful lot from this other game, when the game that the review is left on is a remake of one of the original games in a genre, and the game that they're comparing it to and suggesting it took things from is actually like 10 to 15 years younger than the game that we're experiencing.
And possibly an homage, or like,
and like
original game came out 20 years ago. Like it gets re-released. People are like, hey, but this game 10 years ago, they seem to be lifting a lot from it. Like, no, that game was lifting from this game, which is now, you know, remastered up.
I what was it? It was Dune. Oh my God, it was the new Dune. And someone went, hey, this is a lot like Star Wars. And I went, no, that's not how this works. No, stop. No, back up. No, backwards. Not how this works. Right? Like, Shakespeare and the original Klingon. Yes, correct. Exactly. So I do think that that's another...
You have not heard Shakespeare until you've read it in its original Klingon.
Right. And I think that that's that's like a good example of part of this too, that does cloud it, right? As we have a less informed or more, like, if I'm an expert in roguelike games and I spend 300 hours on a roguelike game, and someone else has never played a roguelike game before and plays a roguelike game for 10 minutes, unless you drill down and look at how long we've played those games, Steam counts both of those reviews equally.
Right.
Because I'm not a professional critic, right, in Steam's eyes. Right. And so,
well, you haven't registered and gone through the process of setting yourself up in a,
right.
Like if we were publishing a set of reviews under extra credits,
right,
you might get picked up as a professional critic for that.
Right. And I do want to do this, right? There is absolutely value in user reviews.
Oh yeah.
It is in understanding what that value is and how to glean the most appropriate value for your purposes out of that data, rather than taking at face value, oh, this game has a Metacritic score of 9.3. It must be a hidden gem among DS games. I should go and spend hundreds of dollars on a copy of this, right? Like,
Will, you know what? Actually, I think it would be really interesting on Steam.
Yeah.
What if they rearranged it? So when you saw right at the top where the reviews are right now, if there was two scores there, one said, Metacritic 83, and then it said like Steam community sentiment, overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. They don't call it a review score. They just rename it to sentiment, because at that point, you're getting kind of the best of both. You're getting, here's what the critics think, and here is both the recent and overall sentiment of what our audience is.
Yeah. By the way, I thought I was joking. I was not. There are copies of Cory in the House currently going for between $150 and $500 on eBay right now. Amazing.
So I want to bring this back a little bit. So we talked about like reviews and other things. Metacritic, because of the way it does things, also has a huge role in the game industry, because we've seen that, it's probably I'd say it is the most trusted review site in the entire game industry, because people know there is variance. Maybe that editor at IGN doesn't like your particular kind of game, so they're rating it a little lower, but Games Radar does. So like it averages out a little bit of the rough edges that people just bring to it. But also, because of the world we live in and because of how big games are nowadays, there's also a lot of teams that will get hired to make a game, and in a publisher-developer relationship, publishers often contractually want to set a bar that says, we're going to be paying you $23 million to develop this game, but part of what you're guaranteeing is it's going to be a good game. And how do you rate it's a good game? Because in a contract, you don't want it, external producer Bob says, yeah, good enough, because, you getting your team's bonus of like $2 million to pass out among the 130 people who worked on it for 3 years or whatever, like contractual milestones. If it's just relying on your external producer to be like, yeah, good enough, that external producer who's part of the publisher might have a vested interest in not saying that to save his publishing studio millions of dollars, or other things. And so over time, as people started looking for a way to make a contract more just cut and dry, where people can understand I did it or didn't, there started getting put in for some studios on development, must get at least a, 75 or higher on Metacritic, or 80, or, that they would put in some number where X amount of time in, so like 3 months in, this needs to have a review score of at least X on Metacritic to trigger this extra payout clause. And this was the publisher basically looking to ensure good game, but also the developer looking to ensure isn't decided by external producer Bob, who might have an interest in not getting us paid out.
Right.
And those are always set on the professional reviewer side, not on the sentiment analysis side of the audience.
Right, because it turns out it's real easy to cook sentiment analysis, right? You can do an awful lot if you're like, hey, if we get X number of positive reviews on Steam, we'll give out a free thing in game or whatever.
For the 2 weeks after that, our next, all of our DLC will be free.
Right. There's plenty of ways that you can cook that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is I would say one of the more valuable portions of Metacritic is that it is this external mathematical arbiter, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's not doing
Oops, keep going a sec, sorry.
a lot of bias. It has some, right? Like Metacritic has some bias in what it ranks and weights and what it includes, it doesn't include. But that is a known and continuous factor, right? Rather than saying like Metacritic doesn't like hidden object games, for instance, right? It is a mathematical arbiter rather than a singular independent reviewer. And yes, Gladius, absolutely, 100%. I'm reasonably confident Steam does have a rule about non-incentivizing reviews like that. I'm suggesting that it might be, if they were using the user review section of Metacritic, then it wouldn't be encouraging them on Steam. It'd be encouraging them on Metacritic, and that would be hard to undo or track, right? Any time there's the possibility of allowing any kind of external influence on it, if it's not in something like Steam where the review is directly tied to the purchase location, it's very hard to track. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. All of this is just, it goes so much deeper than most people think about. And again, I only know this because I spent years running a group that used our own version of Metacritic as one of our data points when referencing all of this stuff, because in the same way as we talk about Plants vs. Zombies and good, well-reviewed games equivalently sell better, this is a very true thing. And review score is still a good shorthand for how well was the game put together.
It's the elevator pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, right? I am a big opponent of overusing the elevator pitch, in the same way that I'm a big opponent of overusing the review score, right? And that is a great place to begin a conversation, or to, in shorthand, express to someone who is using similar shorthand an idea. And then if those things aren't true, you need to use it to begin the rest of the conversation or say more about it, right? Because again, we're hammering out a multi-page document down to number, right?
And one of the other interesting things is, for years, and actually I want to kind of swing into a new arc with this, if you're okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Game reviewers were notoriously onerous with publishers, and the publishers would be like, I want this, and the reviewer's like, well, I'm doing my review. Like, the games media, despite the whole Gamersgate thing, is actually surprisingly good and independent, or at least was for a long time, and I'm going to get to a little bit of the shift, at basically flipping the bird to EA and 2K and all of the other groups and saying, no, game reviews aren't for sale.
Right.
Like, this was their professional livelihood. And for people who went in to become game reviewers, in the same way for like movie reviewers and a whole bunch of other stuff, they didn't go in thinking this was a high-paid job, or, it was going to make them Ferrari money or other things. It was, I love games. I love reading about them. I love playing them. And I love writing about them and being a critic.
Yeah.
And one of the problems we've seen is that publishers are getting less and less interested, and for good reason on their side, on leaving it up, all of this audience, first impression anchoring effect up to any to chance. Studios, publishers will often pick the first people who get to see their game, only supply limited numbers of review sites with copies of the game, and then will pick the ones they think are most likely to be predisposed to liking the kind of game they're doing.
Yeah.
And they try to manipulate it as much as they can. Like, again, I understand that. Like, if I had a publisher working for me for a game I'm deving, I would absolutely want them to be sending out early review copies to people who we think would treat it the best. Because, hey, as a developer, this is the game I've just spent years working on. Of course, I want the people who are going to like it to see it first.
Right.
Like, that may not be the best thing for the audience.
Right.
But with the rise more and more of influencers and with the consolidation among gaming media,
yes,
we now have less sites doing reviews and more people also going to watch somebody say play the game on Twitch instead of getting a review score, or go look up somebody on TikTok or Insta doing a quick story about it, or other things. That person you like on YouTube who does shorts, the funny game guy, like, oh, I'm going to go see what he thought about Clair Obscura. And, that may be the thing they check instead of the Metacritic feed or others. So we're seeing a shift in some cases in ways that people engage with. Because before Metacritic, there was also you either read a magazine, but it was also the gathering in the playground or the water cooler. It's like, hey, I hear you picked up the new, Mario game. Isn't it good?
Right.
And if your buddy's like, yeah, that's really good, you're like, oh, cool, it's really good. Like, all of this is kind of a proxy for who you go to ask before spending your money.
Yes.
But we've seen some kind of consolidation. We've seen publishers showing up at less trade shows, doing more digital events where they control the whole thing, and a reviewer doesn't actually get a hands-on copy of the game, possibly until it's released. And like all sorts of things that have been making it harder and harder for review sites to actually do their jobs, both internally from consolidation and in some cases lack of funding, but also from publishers being less willing to engage, and less trade shows like E3 and other things that give them chances to engage with it.
Right. Nintendo didn't send out any review copies of the Switch 2, as I recall. They held back on those because they didn't feel like they needed the review scores.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting concept, right? Because from as someone who wants to advocate for consumers in this, I absolutely want there to be review scores so people know whether they're spending $500 in the middle of maybe not the best economic times on a fancy brick or not.
Yeah.
Right. And it's tough because we don't have. I think we have seen that people are willing to spend money based on that sentiment score rather than a reviewer score more and more and more frequently.
Yeah.
Right?
Or different people have different things that they're looking for.
Yes.
On that. Some people might want that objective meta score, and others might say, hey, I tend to like the games that, Steve the streamer does. So I'm just going to go check out what Steve says. And if Steve the streamer likes it, cool.
Yeah.
And that is a tricky thing. But one of the things we did notice, and I don't know if this is still true because I don't run the data studio anymore, but game reviewers were very, very close to what game consumers were on their taste. So you didn't get the Transformers thing where, the movies, the critics were giving Transformers a 30, but it was the best selling, one of the best selling movies of the year.
Right.
That never happened in games.
Right.
There were, I know for the past couple years, but for the 2 decades before that, there was never a game that was, say, in the 30s, 40s, or 50s of review score that was a breakout hit.
Right.
Ever. It didn't happen. There were occasionally ones that might have snuck in on a 70, but usually to be a breakout hit, it was at least an 80 review score, and for a while a 90. There was a direct correlation between review score number and amount of revenue earned from game sales, to the point where it was almost, we could prove causation.
And I think that there's a bunch.
And again, that was just because the reviewers lined up with what game audiences liked.
Right. And I think that part of that too is that the industry is, I'm gonna say, flatter than movies. Right. So here's my argument for this. If I want to watch Sinners, which just broke every record for broke the record for most nominations by the way.
I saw that this morning. It was like 16 or something.
16 out of 24 categories Sinners is nominated for. I hope it wins them all. I have to go to a specific venue to watch that, right? I have to go to a specific venue for movies to watch that. But if I want to watch a singular person whom I know play or make an artistic endeavor in film-esque fashion, YouTube video, I go to a different place. I go to YouTube. But in games, if I want to buy the latest and greatest, I don't know, okay, latest, it's probably not greatest, Black Ops game, right? With all of its controversy, I go to Steam. And if I want to buy the solo dev teeny tiny project that I know the developer and want to support them and think they made a cool thing, I also go to Steam. The industry is much less striated in terms of the consumer side than a lot of other industries are, I think. And I do think that weighs into what you're saying.
Actually, I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, my thought had always been, we have 100+ years of film critique.
Sure.
People go to film school. They get taught by film professors. There are things you get, like what you might think makes up, the best bones of a movie may not be what the mainstream audience wants to go watch and have a good time. Like there's a difference between, in the same way, it's that wine thing.
Yeah.
That $50 or $100 bottle of wine is enjoyed more by some people than, kind of the general mainstream group at $10 who couldn't tell the difference between all of them.
Yeah.
Like there's kind of that level in film. But for games, fun games are fun games. Like there aren't a lot of art house games. There are game of that style.
Yeah.
That kind of, well, I guess, and part of it too is people know the kinds of games they like.
Yes.
If I'm like, Will, here's an amazing art house game, you might be like, Geoff, I don't like art house games in the same way you don't like racing games or, whatever it is. But if you go play it, that reviewer who reviewed it will most likely line up with your feels on it.
Yeah.
And that the people who review games are big game players and enjoy their big, sprawling, mainstream fun games.
Is there also something to the idea that there is a skill involved or an acquisition of skill involved in playing that many games because it is an active experience?
Maybe.
It may also be, I surmise, part of it, right? The idea that it's not just that you've played all of these games, it's that you've gotten good enough at all of these games to play and beat it. Yeah.
There's also, there's different time scale scope.
Yes. Also very true. Very, very true, right? An hour and a half movie, I could sleep through, right? But I can't do that to a bad game.
Yeah.
I'm still.
And it's the difference in the interactive versus passive experience. Like, there's a whole bunch in it.
And I think
it's.
My point is only that like games have all of these unique factors that lead to us having this really strong correlation between what reviewers are saying and what the public is generally saying, with exceptions for the sentiment score.
Here it is, Will. I've got it. You ready? We're keeping on the food analysis.
Okay.
Movie reviewers are like people who review wine. Game reviewers are like people who review burgers.
Okay, I dig. I think. Yeah, because like burgers are more accessible, right?
Yeah, they're more accessible. And it's one of those things that like, if you're like, I'm in the mood for a burger, the person reviewing burgers probably going to do you well. Like there's certain criteria of burgers. They're like, yeah, this is going to be a good burger. And, there's variants, of course, and that's different than, I guess, the depth that you find in wine or something. And it's not a perfect analysis, but I'm going with it.
I mean, I could talk to you about burgers, but that's for a different time.
No, but like, I bet if you and I, my dad has gone all around our very big hometown and is like, he and his friends have spent 15 or 20 years for the city of San Diego rating burger places. And he has a list of what he considers to be the best burger places in all of San Diego. From him and his pals having done this for decades. Yeah. I bet anybody who likes burgers, my dad, could give his top 10 list to, and they would be happy at all 10 of those places.
Yeah. They might not order them the same, but they will agree that they are all
superb examples of what a burger shop can do.
Right.
Or not even a burger shop, a place that serves burgers, because some of them are like, notoriously, like, this one dive bar, it's like, the burgers are amazing. It's not a burger shop, it's a dive bar, but they heard about good burgers, so they went to check it out.
Right. Yeah. No, I dig that. Oh, chat. I think that's a good analysis to end on. I like this. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about Metacritic. Did we miss something? Are you one of the people who's leaving positive reviews for Cory in the House? Do you also claim that it is a life-changing, majestic experience for the Nintendo DS that caused you to experience the universe in an entirely new way? Leave a comment if you did. We'll be back next week. We're going to be hopefully checking out a game next week. And if you want to do
Should I say the name of the game or no?
No, they get to, they got to show up next.
Actually, we're going to be checking out a game that's in early access with two of the developers on the game, specifically looking to watch Will and I play a friend slop game and hear our and the community's feedback about the game, because they still have time to twist, tune, and otherwise continue to evolve their game.
Yeah, so come with your feedback hats on next week. If you're watching this live, hang out. Matt and I are going to jump into Hightail and give you our first thoughts on that with some special guests here on Twitch. But I believe that will.
Is that why we need to hightail it out of here to get ready for?
Oh man, we almost made it, chat. I think we almost made it an entire episode without a Geoff pun, and there at the very end he had to spike it. Oh, it was so close. I almost got us out of here. I'm sorry, Chad. I failed you. All right, everybody. Say bye to the people, Geoff.
Bye to the people, Geoff. See you next week, everybody.